Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? I could really use a wish right now, wish right now, wish right now. Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? I could really use a wish right now, wish right now, wish right now.
Yeah, I could use a dream or a genie or a wish to go back to a place much simpler than this. Cause after all the
A lot of big words you sent me in this introduction, so I hope I will make it through with my English. Hi, listeners, and welcome to episode number 6 in our community podcast, Bridging the Gap. We have a very special guest with us today who has a very unique story. Our guest today is our community member and Sinai Synagogue member, John Roncz. John is responsible for some portion of over 50 aircraft designs. The most recent to fly is the Icon A5, which is the first aircraft to be approved as a spin resistance. He was responsible for the aerodynamic design and performance of 2 aircraft in the National Air and Space Museum, Voyager, the first airplane to circumnavigate the Earth without refueling, and Global Flyer, the radical globe circling jet, in which Steve Fossett set 3 world records. He has designed 16 propellers and wind turbines. He wrote 12 articles for Sports Aviation and has guest lectured at 8 universities, including being honored as an Old Master by Purdue University. Among his awards are the Stanley Zick Memorial Trophy, the Honor Roll of Professional Pilot Magazine, the Medal of Achievement from Sailing World Magazine, the Professor August Raspet Award, and the Milwaukee School of Engineering Gold Medal. In November 2000, he was honored by His Royal Highness Prince Philip at a ceremony in London, where he was presented with the Prince's Australian Medal for the design of the Eagle. John is an honors graduate of the University of Notre Dame, an artist, and the classical pianist. He holds a commercial pilot's license with multi-engine instruments and glitter ratings and has logged over 1,800 hours. He's currently employed as a chief designer for Windecker Aircraft, designing a new high-performance private airplane. Thank you so much, John, for joining us today. That was a hard introduction. I think I made it.
I've had a crazy life, huh?
Yeah. So many things. So after we talked on the phone, I had so many questions I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
So I think we better just start.
Okay.
Maybe you could just start with telling about where did you grow up? Like a little bit about your...
Okay. I'm a native of South Bend. So I've been here most of my life. I did go to college in New York, the Rochester Institute of Technology. But other than that, my life has really been spent here.
So you're a true Hoosier,
I am.
as they say. Okay, so you told me you grew up Catholic.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it? And how did you get to Judaism?
My mother is a very devout Catholic. All of us children went to 8 years of school at St. Joseph Grade School in South Bend, Catholic school. Then I went to a private boarding school on the campus of Notre Dame for high school, and also Catholic, being taught by priests, basically. In the course of that, I wanted to learn languages. I have a skill I can't explain for learning languages, so I was doing French, and then I learned Greek, and I wanted to study Hebrew. And at that time, they had discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I was very interested in the history of, religion. A man named Julius Tucker, who I believe at one point was the president of Sinai, arranged for 3 of us high school kids to be taught by Judah Rosenberg, who was a professor of civil engineering at Notre Dame, but also the cantor at Sinai.
Hmm.
So the three of us would drive over to Sinai every week and learn Hebrew from him. And so that was my connection to Sinai. The more I began learning and reading some of the early documents of the Catholic Church, I became convinced that there were a lot of holes in the story. You know, you're talking about New Testaments being written anywhere from 30 to 100 years after by people who never met Jesus. I mean, once you get really into it, you find out all kinds of mistakes in the New Testament. Like in the story of Mark, he obviously had never been to Israel because he has the geography of the country all wrong. It's like saying that we went from here to New York by way of Chicago. And so, wait a minute, you know. But anyway, I just couldn't be Catholic anymore. I couldn't be Christian anymore.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to be a member of some community. And I remembered Sinai. And at that time, the rabbi at Sinai was a young man
Hmm.
named Cooperman, Rabbi Cooperman. And so I went to him and talked to him and underwent about a year of instruction and then a full Orthodox conversion.
This year here in South Bend, I got to know some new friends who are Christians and Muslims. And a few weeks ago, a Christian friend asked me what I think is the main difference between Christianity and Judaism. And I think it's an interesting question. I really had to stop and think about it before I answered her. So I would like to ask you the same question. What in your experience and in your eyes is the main difference between Christianity and Judaism?
Well, the Christians believe that Jesus, or Yeshua in Hebrew, is God, that God is divided into three parts. You know, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, okay?
Mhm.
And somehow they're all supposed to be one God in
Mhm.
three divine persons. And if you think about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mhm.
Because according to the Catholics, well, the Christians in general, Jesus was tortured and died, you know, under the hands of the Romans on a cross, was nailed to a cross and died. And this was to please his Father, to forgive mankind for their sins. That's
Mhm.
the truth. But think about it. If God the Father and God the Son are the same person, then why do I have to kill part of myself to convince the other part of myself to forgive or to do anything, right? You
Uh-huh.
see the contradiction?
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's the big difference. I mean, Jews believe in one God and Christians believe in three.
So after I thought about it, I answered my friend that, in my opinion, the main difference between Judaism and Christianity is that Judaism is a story of one family, the 12 sons of Yaakov who became a nation, who multiplied and became a nation. And
Mhm.
the fact that Judaism is also a nation, that it doesn't matter if you were born Jewish or converted to Judaism, we have the same faith and the same destiny. So that was kind of my answer.
That's a good
Um,
answer. I like that answer. Yeah.
and when I thought about it, it reminded me the short story you told me about your experience in the mikveh when you converted.
It just basically reminded me that Jews have been persecuted all through history. And
Mhm.
do I really want to belong to a group that could be persecuted? You know, am I willing to accept that fate if that's the fate? And my answer was yes.
So to another subject, a little bit about Air Force and aircraft and all the things you've done there. How did you get to work with the Israeli Air Force?
Okay. Well, basically, I've done, as you said, worked on over 50 projects, and several of them have been very famous. You know, Voyager and Global Flyer hanging in the National Air and Space Museum at the Smithsonian. So my reputation is well known in the industry. And actually, Israel Aircraft Industries, IAI, had a contract from our government to make an airplane to do a certain mission. And they built it and it didn't work. And so they
Mhm.
came back and they were looking for help. Can you do something with this to make it work? And
Uh-huh.
so, you know, I'm very good at what I do. And so I redesigned the airplane and then they built the new version and it worked fine. And so I have a reputation in Israel for that. And then I was invited by Silver Arrow to do a few drones for them. And then
Hmm.
I was asked by Elbit Systems to do a few drones for them. I think I've got about 9 drones flying in Israel right now.
Uh-huh.
But I love working with the Israelis. It's a very different experience than working with US companies
Hmm.
because the Israeli engineers have passion for what they do. When I show up,
Really?
they're bringing me their radio controlled models from home and asking questions. How do I improve this? And, I mean, they love what they do. But when I work for Boeing, these guys really, they just punch the clock. They're just,
Really?
yeah, they stand around the coffee machine and talk about sports. And, I mean, they have no passion for what they do. It's like it's a way of earning a living. And
Wow.
I found that very big difference between the people I've encountered in the United States and the people in Israel.
Hmm.
The people in Israel really care about what they do. I can also tell you that the Israelis expect $5 worth of work for every dollar they spend. But that's fine with me.
Did you have an idea why this difference exists? Did you have your thought in it?
Well, because they're surrounded by enemies, their lives are at stake in a way. But I also just think it's just the mentality of the people.
Hmm.
They take what they do very seriously. And whereas the Americans, they work for a huge company with thousands of employees, they're just a
Right.
number, and
It's not that personal for them, I think.
no, exactly. Right. And the Israelis tend to have smaller groups of people who are
Mhm.
very dedicated.
Do you have an interesting story from working with the Israelis or with the Israeli Air Force?
I told you the story about working on a project that I had a Mossad agent accompanied the engineers to the United States. It was terrible. We had to lock everything up when we left the house because he might have stolen everything. I don't know.
Oh my God.
But we went out to dinner, and on the way back, one of the engineers had a young daughter who wanted a doll based on a cartoon or a character on television named Elf. And so he wanted to stop at Toys R Us to buy his daughter a doll. And the Mossad agent went crazy. Why are we stopping shopping for doll? We should be making technical discussion. And I thought to myself, yeah, go fly a kite. We're going to buy the little girl a nice doll, which we did. But that's the only negative experience I had working with the Israelis. Most of them are very dedicated and they're very smart,
Mhm.
really smart. And I enjoy working with smart people.
So you are working with airplanes and aircraft, and do you know to say what is it in planes and drones and all that world that just attracts you that much?
Yeah, I mean, I was attracted to building model airplanes as a child. Balsa wood models, and I'd cut them out and powered by a rubber band. And when I got my driver's license, I used to drive to the airport and watch the airplanes take off and land. I'm not sure why I was so attracted to it.
Hmm.
But when I was in high school, I went to the Notre Dame bookstore and bought a book called Theory of Wing Sections. That fascinated me. And so when the first microprocessor was invented by Intel, I
Hmm.
actually built a computer based on that. And I
Wow.
went and I used the computer to go back through the mathematics of the wing section book. And what I was interested in is the issue of whether what they would do is they would build an actual model, like a wooden model or a metal model of a wing, and put it in a wind tunnel and blow air over it to measure the forces, the lift and the drag and the twisting moments. And I was curious whether you could ever design a computer program that would predict the results without having to spend all this time building a model and testing it.
Hmm.
And so I was fascinated with that issue. And the first 2 computers that I used were actually ones that I built myself. So I don't know why I'm fascinated with it. It's like, why do some people grow up and they want to play the French horn, or the
Yep.
cello? You know what I mean? It's just, I can't explain that.
I want to get to a completely other subject we talked about.
Okay.
Um, so other than all that amazing things you do, I was told, and you told me, you have a very special ability and that you are a medium,
Yes.
that you have an ability to talk with the dead. So
Yes.
what does that mean? Can you explain to our listeners, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's basically in the early 2000s, I was having a lot of very unusual experiences in the house here. It all started with half a bag of chocolate chips. It did, true.
Okay.
Because I get up in the morning and I open the cabinet and I take out a coffee filter and put it in the machine, add the water, put some coffee in there, turn it on
Okay.
and go take a shower. So when I get out of the shower, I have my coffee. And
Okay.
one morning I opened the cabinet and sitting in front of the coffee filters was a half a bag of Nestle's Toll House chocolate chips, folded
Okay.
over and had a big yellow clip sealing the bag.
Uh-huh.
And I have never bought chocolate chips in my life, and I don't own a yellow clip, and I'm living alone. So like when I first saw it, I just started laughing. I just thought this was hilarious, you know. And my first reaction was, I don't get a whole bag. You're going to go to all this trouble of putting this in my house, and you're
Give me
giving
the
me
other
half a
half.
bag, half a bag, you know. But I had been studying Kabbalah for a while, and
Okay.
I knew there's a lot of mystical things we don't understand. Okay,
Uh-huh.
and so I took that as some kind of a like the spirit world or whatever playing a game with me. And that
Okay.
was the beginning of many, many other things exactly like that. And there was a television program called Crossing Over with a medium named John Edward.
Mm-hmm.
And I began watching that, and I was fascinated with the fact that he could come up with facts about people he knew nothing about. And so I took my mother on a cruise in Florida. My parents lived in Florida, and my father died. And I would go take my mother on a cruise for 3-day cruise or 4-day cruise, just to
Mm-hmm.
get her away from all the distractions and spend time alone with her.
Yeah.
And on one cruise, I met a medium named John Holland, and he actually gave me my first reading in his little cabin. and, and he told me things about Rabbi Cooperman that no one would know, because he described him, uh, and he was dead. He's been dead for years. And he
Okay.
talked about, he said, he's concerned about his wife because she had problems with her car. Okay. And there's something about a cup that's been handed down in the family. And one of his boys wants to join the army. And his mom, tell his mother that let him go. Let him go. It'll be good for him.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got home, I called Judy Cooperman. I talk to her now about every week at least. And sure enough, her youngest son, Yoni, wanted to join the military, and she was against it.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And her car had broken down the week before.
Wow.
Okay. But she didn't know anything about the cup. So later I talked to their oldest boy, who was married and living away from her. And he had gone back to the house looking for something in the closet. And he came across a Kiddush cup
Uh-huh.
that belonged to the great grandfather. And it was all like dirty, And so he bought polish and polished it back up, and he's using it at his house.
Wow.
So everything John said to me was exactly true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how would he know that? Right? There's no way to know that unless he was
Right.
actually talking to Rabbi Cooperman. Right. And so that kind of made me believe this was possible. Anyway, John and I became friends on texting back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And then he invited me to a 5-hour taping by a Boston television station was going to film 5 mediums and make some
Mm-hmm.
kind of program out of it. And he was one of them. So I flew to New England. I was in the audience, about 300 people. And one of the other mediums, not John, but a lady, after she did readings for the audience, she walked off the stage and down the aisle and stood directly in front of me and said, I've never seen so many spirits around one person before. Why aren't you on stage doing what I do? I mean, I was kind of embarrassed, but
Uh-huh.
anyway, as I followed up on it, John had a weekend course that I went to discover your own psychic ability. And everything he asked us to do, I had no problem doing. John had gone to England to study at the Arthur Findlay College, which is the foremost university in the world studying psychic science.
Hmm.
And he encouraged me to go there. So I signed up.
Before that woman told you that she sees your abilities, did you actually see people? Did you actually
No,
got to talk with people?
no.
So you just had those really weird
I had
things going on.
a whole lot of very strange experiences. I'll
Uh-huh.
have to give you a copy of my book and you can read all about them. There's a whole bunch of
Okay.
them. But yeah, so I went to the Arthur Findlay College in the beginners class for a week, and I could do everything they asked us to do.
Hmm.
And so the second week, they put me into an advanced group, which I was scared the whole week. I mean, it seemed like everything they were asking me to do was crazy.
Wow.
For example, one of the teachers brought a little tray of sand in the room and had some lady press her handprints into the sand. And then she announced to the whole school, now John will come and tell you the story of your life in detail up to the age of 20 by looking at the sand. Now,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, oh my goodness. And I thought, she's making a fool out of me, right?
Yeah.
But I just took a deep breath, looked at the sand and started talking. And she said, well done, John, because I got all the details correct. So where's
Wow.
that coming from? I don't know. But yeah, so it took me, I went back over about 3 years. Every year I would go for a week or two and learn what I could do. And then finally, Joyce Hugg, who runs a local venue called Sacred Waters, said, when are you gonna do this publicly? So she scheduled an evening and people came and I demonstrated how mediumship works, and it was
Wow.
remarkable. And I've been doing it ever since. Of course, now with COVID, we can't do that.
Hmm.
But I do private readings lately on Skype or FaceTime. I
Hmm.
did one last Thursday for a man on FaceTime.
Is it harder when it's not in person,
No,
or it doesn't matter?
it doesn't matter. The spirits are with them, not with me. And it's a skill of being able to get out of your own head. I have to be an empty blank.
Hmm.
And the spirits talk. They don't have vocal cords. They don't speak. They send pictures,
Hmm.
or they send thoughts, or you hear a name in your head, or you feel something going wrong with your body.
Hmm.
So if I get a big chest pain, I'll know this person passed from a lung disease or heart problem. So I let them use my body and my head to put ideas in. I had a very funny story. It's on my Facebook page. But I was doing for a reading for a lady in Florida on Skype, and her husband recently passed. And he talked about how they met and how they went on a cruise for their honeymoon, and lots of stories about their life together.
Hmm.
Because it's really important for me to prove that it's really that person. I have
Right.
to be able to say things that I have no way of knowing, right? All the spirits usually they do something to show that they're still around. A lot of times they'll say, well, he sends the butterflies around you, and
Hmm.
people say, oh yeah, every time I go outside, I have butterflies around me. That's a normal thing. Or finding coins, finding pennies everywhere you go. That's common.
Uh-huh.
This guy said that he sent her a snake. A snake. And I'm thinking, oh my God, a snake.
Of all things you could send me,
Yeah, I was almost afraid to say it.
it's better to get a bag of chocolate chips.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, anyway, she was all excited because she's a big nature animal lover. And since her husband died, a black snake is living in one of her bushes in the yard. So she took a picture of the snake and sent it to
Wow.
me. So if you look at my Facebook page, you'll see a picture of the snake. I put
Uh-huh.
a picture of it.
Wow.
And, so even if it doesn't make sense, I tell people what I'm getting from the other side.
Hmm.
I always believe them.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's a skill And the hardest thing is to say things that don't make sense because I don't understand their life. I don't know these
Yeah.
people, right?
Hmm.
And so in the beginning, the hardest thing is to believe what you're getting, no matter how crazy it was. But I've had spirits come through the roof, right through the ceiling on a parachute.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've had one Navy guy who arrived on the ship, on a battleship. I've had a submarine come into the room. I mean, you just
Wasn't
have
it
to.
wasn't it scary? What did you think at first when you just found this out? When you just found out
Right.
that you have this ability? Wasn't it scary, or isn't it scary to just, to just see people, to
Yeah,
see
it
weird
it it,
stuff?
it it's I won't say it's scary, but it's if you're going to say something about someone you don't know, I don't know these people, I don't know, I never met them,
Hmm.
and to say stuff out loud that sounds crazy, I'm opening myself up to be laughed at,
Right.
or it's embarrassing in a way. And
Yeah.
so no matter what I see, if I see a snake, I say a snake. Now I'm
Yeah.
not afraid to say that. But in the beginning, oh yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know if I would have had the courage to say that or not. By going back to the Arthur Findlay College, I've been back about 15 times over since
Wow.
2006. And I have great confidence in what I'm getting. And so
So
I learned to trust the spirit world. But these people,
so
when we call them
how
dead, but they're not. They're more alive than we are. And they're still people. And they are anxious to communicate.
how did your close friends, or like your closest surrounding, responded to when you told them that?
Well, let's start with when I told my Catholic mother that I converted to Judaism. That was the best. There's a reaction that, she
Yeah.
looks at me and she said, they don't believe in God. And I said, Mom, Moses, Ten Commandments. And she
Hmm.
said, well, they don't believe in something. Yeah, that was hard. No, my mother was always in love psychics, and she'd go every psychic she could find, she would go to.
Oh, really? So it wasn't strange for her.
No, I don't think it was strange for her, but I never gave her a reading.
Hmm.
It was strange for me more than her. She had Alzheimer's, and so she spent 8 years in an institution, and she didn't know who I was, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I was there the last few days that she was dying, and
Hmm.
I saw members of her family coming for her.
Wow.
There's another story like that. I mean, sometimes it hurts, you know. One of the great guys at Sinai was Ron Adelsberg. He read Torah. He was brilliant. He taught me to read the Torah.
Hmm.
He was a fantastic guy, and he was in the hospital in very bad health. And I would visit him in the hospital. He'd be on the phone teaching Torah. I mean, he was just amazing. Yeah, he was. You could talk to people about him. And
Hmm.
I remember the last time I was there, I saw his mother next to him, and
Wow.
I said, Ron, who's so and so? And it was an unusual name, and he said, oh, that's my mother. And so I told him a little bit about his mom, and I had my roommate at that time, Dustin Livers, who's also a medium. He was living with me as he went to college. He is also a medium, and he saw his father on the other side of the bed. And when we walked to the car afterwards, we just looked at each other and said, we'll never see him again. We'll never see him alive again because
Wow.
his family had come for him, and he died that night.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that's really beautiful, though, if you think about that. It's not always easy.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of tragedy in this world. Last month, I had a lady whose 2-year-old daughter drowned at her birthday party on her second birthday. Can you imagine that? What that must
No,
be like? I can't
I
either.
really can't imagine that.
I can't. So there's a lot of people who are hurting. There's a lot of pain in the world, and what mediumship does is it tries to heal the grief and sorrow by bringing through, proving that their loved ones are still with them. They can't see them, but you can't see television signals or radio signals either.
So
But we
you were
know,
talking. So you were talking with this girl.
yes, oh yeah, she was wonderful. Oh, she was fantastic. I loved her to death. She showed me her dancing in front of the TV, and she loved the balloons they had for her birthday party. And her mom showed me a picture of the ceiling, and they had these helium-filled balloons that go up, and they were all up stuck on the ceiling. So when I said she loved the balloons, and they cremated her, and she even told me the clothes that she was wearing when they cremated her. I mean, it was amazing. The thing about that one that got me, at the end, she was saying brother, brother, and her mom said she doesn't have a brother. And so I know what I'm getting, and I know I got it right. And so I said, I'm going to ask you a personal question. Are you pregnant? And she said, yes. I said, it's a boy, isn't it? And she said, yes. So
Wow.
this little girl in the spirit world already knew
Wow.
that she was getting a brother. You can't make this up. I mean, it's just,
No, I just can't.
you just can't. It's beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful.
If talking about making this up, so what do you tell people who think this ability is not real and that you are making this up?
I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. It's not my job to convince you of anything. I'm not a salesman. I'm not.
Right.
All I'm doing is I'm using the skills that I have to be a messenger. And people say, well, that can't work. And I said, well, it's sort of like gravity. It works whether you believe in it or not. Most people end up laughing in a reading and crying in a reading. I mean, it touches something deep in the soul to hear things that no one could possibly know about you and your relationship and memories that you have. I'm not here to prove anything. And if you want to say, well, that was a bunch of crap, if the medium's done a good job, you can't say that, because they would say, how would he know that?
Going back to what we started before, so would you say that most of the spirits that are talking to you were reconciled with the fact that they died, or did they feel like they missed their life, or strong feelings of regret? Like, did you find most people kind of complete with the fact that they died, or no?
That's a very good question, actually. Most people who died at an old age when they were sick were happy to cross over. They were ready. And usually their children or their loved ones who were with them knew that they were ready to go. Okay. And usually they'll come back and say, I want to thank you for telling me that it was okay to go, because they didn't want to hang around anymore. If you have a suicide, sometimes, they feel the pain that their death caused their family and friends. And so they feel kind of ashamed,
Wow.
to have caused that. And sometimes they never really intended to die. I had a case like that last week with someone. So it all depends. It's not uncommon
If it
for a
was
parent.
someone who died in an accident, or
Yeah,
someone who died in a war or a terror attack, like someone who was
right.
died by surprise.
You get two reactions from that. One is people, they go to church and everything or whatever. They believe in something called heaven and all this, but they really don't believe it. They say it. Some say they sing the hymns or whatever, but they don't really believe it. And then all of a sudden they die and they're still alive. Their soul is still alive. And sometimes they can look back on their dead body, and they're actually surprised on the happy side. Oh, this isn't the end. So you
Really?
you get the surprise that, oh, but I didn't expect this. I didn't think this was real. And then they got all kinds of reactions. But yeah, a sudden death is very it can be either way. They're happy, or if they're in great pain, if they were shot in a war, for example, and they're bleeding to death, and they may be in great pain. And crossing over is actually a relief. But the people on the other side are generally happy. The one thing that is fairly common are parents coming back to tell their children that they are sorry, because there are parents who, I won't say neglected their kids, but who had basically no connection, especially men in an older generation. They put the food on the table, they paid for the food, but they didn't really have a relationship with their kids. And so they come back to apologize, and they say, I should have spent more time. I wish I got to know you as a person. I got that a lot. Okay.
Wow.
So you get all kinds, of reactions from people. So you have the really happy marriages, like the last person I did a reading for, and he and his wife were madly in love for 60 years, and it was a beautiful relationship.
Mhm.
But you also get people coming back to apologize to people.
In your experience with this whole thing, so it looks like you kind of know the answer that everyone are asking. What happens to us when we die?
As best as I can tell, it's a two-part thing. And when you first die, you're put into something the spirit world calls the place of familiarity. They're putting you into an environment, a setting that would be familiar to you until you can adapt to the fact that you're dead and you're now a
Wow.
spirit. And it's in that place that you'll meet all the people who loved you will meet you when you cross over. And then they kind of show you the ropes, but the spirit world is there's no bodies there, right? And you recognize them by their energy. And how that works, I don't know. But when they come through to me, they describe themselves the way so that you would recognize them. So, for example, a friend whose father had one leg. I didn't know that. Her father came through and he was sitting in a wheelchair with one leg.
Hmm.
And I said, I have a guy here who's sitting in a wheelchair with one leg. She said, that's my dad. And I didn't know her dad had one leg. But when they cross over, he's got two legs. Any kind of illness that you had goes away when you cross over. And then there's something called the second death, which is as a spirit, and I think it's giving up your attachment to this world. But I don't know. I haven't been there.
Does it matter if a person was a bad person or a good person in life? Kind of like heaven and hell, but
Yes,
does that matter?
Um, it matters a lot. I remember doing a reading for a man up in New England, and he lost his son, his daughter, and his father all in a short time, all for different reasons.
Wow.
And he was a mess, right? And so I reunited him with his father, with his son, and with his daughter. And there was a beautiful, loving relationship. They all loved each other. And it was actually enjoyable for me to give that love back to him. And in the course of that reading, I felt this cold, dark, black energy. I have never felt anything like this before. It was scary. It was creepy.
Wow.
And so I said, I have someone here who never smiled, who never had a good thing to say. It was just very dark. And he said, I don't know anybody like that. So what a medium does is you go back to the spirit person and said, I need a relationship. I need something. How do you tie together with this guy? And the voice came back, teacher. And I said, it's a woman, and she was your teacher. And he thought about it. And he went to a Catholic school.
Hmm.
And in fourth grade, he had a nun who hated him. She picked on him constantly, called him names, made him stand in the corner, made fun of him. She really mistreated him.
Hmm.
And even though he passed he had a good enough grade, at the end of the year, she talked his mother into sending him back through the fourth grade again, so she could have more time to torture him. I thought that was amazing. I said, so why is she here in your reading? And he said, well, she's probably asking for forgiveness, but I haven't thought about her in 30 or 40 years. I mean, I'm way over that.
Yeah.
And so why was this nun in his reading? It's because she now feels the pain that she caused him. And that pain is amplified with the volume turned up. Okay, so this nun is in hell. That's what hell is. When you go through life, you create emotions in other people. You make them feel good about themselves, or in her case, she put everybody down, made them feel bad about themselves, and made them feel like fools and idiots. And, she tortured this kid. And now she's feeling the pain that she caused him and all of her other victims in her lifetime. And so she is sitting on the other side of the spirit world, feeling all this pain with the volume turned up. So it's really important as you go through your life.
It really matters.
Yeah, it matters. So when you have a chance to make somebody feel good about themselves, do it. Okay, always build people up. Always make them feel good about themselves. Always pick people up. And when you cross over, you will feel all the love that you created by your words and your actions with the volume turned up, and that is heaven. So you do create your own heaven and you create your own hell. But I told him, I said, that nun is now your best friend, because when you forgive somebody, it helps you, because you're not constantly thinking about, oh, she hurt me, or he
Right.
did this to me, and you're replaying these bad things in your mind. If you truly forgive someone, you're over it. But it doesn't.
I heard a sentence that says that not forgiving someone is actually punishing yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So once you forgive that person, really, you can go on with your life, but it doesn't help them. When
Mhm.
they cross over, they're still going to feel the pain they created in you. And so this nun wanted him to know that if he needed something in this life, ask her, because the only way she could get
Wow.
rid of the pain that she's feeling is to do something good for him. It's interesting, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
what religions teach, but this is the way it really is, you know. So I go out of my way to make people feel happy. Say if the person checking out your groceries, has a name on, say, hey, thank you, Susan, or thank you, Josh. Smile at them.
Sounds like also in the afterlife, we keep having this connection, this strong connection with this world.
For a while, yes, that's true. Because if the people you loved are still here, love never dies. Okay, so the people who loved you are still here with you until you finally cross over. Like I say, by the time your great grandchild gets born, most of the people you grew up with and your family are with you in the spirit world.
Yeah.
And so you have less reason to be attached to this. You might notice what's going on, but you're not pulled in by it so much. But no,
So
your family, your loved ones never leave you.
so that leads me to my last question. So I wanted to ask you do you have important lessons you learned about life from talking with the dead?
Well, I think the main lesson again is to remember that you are creating happiness or sadness in other people. And so you be positive in lifting people up.
Thank you so much, John, for this fascinating interview. I'm sure our listeners will enjoy it. Thank you for listening to the 6th episode of our community podcast, Bridging the Gap. Stay tuned to the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Happy Hanukkah!
Heaven, I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak, and I seem to find the happiness I see when we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Yes, heaven, I'm in heaven, and the cares that hung around me through the week seems to vanish like a gambler's lucky streak. When we out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I'd love to climb to mountain, reach the highest peak, but it doesn't thrill me half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I'd love to go out fishing in a river or a creek, but I don't enjoy it half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Now, mama, dance with me. I want my arms about you, the charms about you will carry me through. Yes, heaven. I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak, and I seem to find the happiness I seek when we out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Take it, Ella, swing it.
Heaven, I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak, and I seem to find the happiness I seek when we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Heaven, I'm in heaven, and the cares that hung around me through the week seem to vanish like a gambler's lucky streak when we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I love to climb a mountain and to reach the highest peak, but it doesn't thrill me half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Oh, I love to go out fishing in a river or a creek, but I don't enjoy it half as much as dancing cheek to cheek. Come on and dance with me. I want my arm about you. The charm about you will carry me through to heaven. I'm in heaven, and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak, and I seem to find the happiness I seek when we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek.
Yes,
Dance with me. I want my arms about you. The charm about you will carry me through to heaven.
Heaven,
I'm in heaven,
I'm in heaven.
and my heart beats so that I can hardly speak, and I seem to find the happiness I see when we're out together, dancing cheek to cheek, cheek to cheek, cheek to cheek.